Okay, in this video, we're going to explore essentially an overview of how meditation systems work, why they're designed the way they're designed, and then also my perspective on how we can kind of update these systems by integrating what we know from psychology and psychotherapy into them. So most meditation traditions, especially Buddhism for the most part, you could say are bottom-up traditions versus a top-down. So bottom-up traditions are more focused on purification first. They're also building up the skills of concentration, clarity, equanimity, and you're kind of climbing your way progressively towards an awakening, towards a shift in consciousness. While top-down traditions are more just trying to go straight for the goal. They're trying to just tune into the ultimate reality, to an expansive, non-dual sense of existence. In a way, you could say maybe they're more trying to hack awakening, or they're just taking a very direct approach towards it. So first, to get out of the way, I have heard a bit of debate around what are the actual goals of meditation or Buddhism. You can talk about them around awakening, the end of suffering, freedom, as especially being free from the cyclical suffering, free from reactivity, non-dual awareness. There's a lot of ways to describe the goals. I'm not going to get too into that in this video. I'm going to more so focus on how we get there. So when we're looking at most traditions, they first focus on purification, and also ethics is very big, largely taught, especially in Buddhism. And the reason why this is done this way is because we first need to bring harmony into our being. If we have a lot of inner conflicts, if we have a lot of restlessness, we're not going to get very far in the meditative path. We're not going to be able to get quiet and still enough to tune into more subtle or expansive qualities of being. So to think about this in really practical terms, if you're behaving badly in life, or if you're going through difficult experiences, you can feel those things weighing on you. You carry those things around with you, and it's really hard to get settled and to really just find inner peace, inner calm when your life outwardly is chaotic. So while different traditions have different ways of bringing about purification, I'm going to claim that psychotherapy has come a long way, and that it's actually probably a lot more effective, a lot more efficient, a lot more direct approach to a lot of the things that are challenging people, plaguing people. I really think that the old traditions are very inefficient when it comes to purification. Yes, they work, but they usually only work if you're dedicating hours a day to practice. For most of us, it's not really practical, and if we really want to come to an inner peace, inner harmony, we need to confront whatever the problem is, whatever the activation is, whatever we are holding on to. So one way of looking at these barriers, these inner conflicts, these things that we're holding on to, is to look at them as contractions in our being. And contractions happen out of fear. There's a fear of something maybe in our environment, or we're afraid to feel something. So what we're actually doing mostly in therapy is feeling more safe to have a larger experience. It's feeling more safe to be present in our being, feeling more safe to feel whatever we didn't feel safe to feel before. And there are many ways to cultivate this safety in therapy. It's usually done relationally, that someone is there with us and they are, slowly guiding us through this process. There are all sorts of exercises and practices we can do to help with this. I have a lot of them on my channel. And even just regular meditation, just being with our breath or being with our experience as it is huge to develop safety. I had a teacher once say, meditation is like exposure therapy to life. If you know anything about exposure therapy, let's say you have a fear of spiders. Exposure therapy is like you think of a spider and you notice the activation and you just get comfortable with the activation. Over time that subsides, then maybe you look at a photo of a spider and then that activates, and eventually you might be, in a room with a spider or even holding a spider, and you're acclimating to the feelings of distress and just getting more used to it in your body. And over time you realize, okay, I'm actually okay. This is okay. So meditation is just being with our experience as it is, and a lot of our experience is uncomfortable. And so by just being with the discomfort in the moment and really validating it, saying it's okay to be with this feeling, that in itself is massive for bringing about more of a sense of safety to have our experience. And that can slowly open us. But what I've found through my own practice, through being a therapist and working with people one-on-one, is that the thing that really helps to bring about more safety in our system is just understanding our experience better. So understandings that come from somatic psychology, understanding our body in general, the fight, flight, freeze, fawn responses, understanding how emotions work, how equanimity works, understanding our different parts. And this really draws on IFS, but also Gestalt therapy. So these strategies, which I explore a lot on my channel, I find are far better for the purification process, just bringing inner harmony to the system than, let's say, prostrations or other traditional forms of purification. Through self-awareness, through self-understanding, these contracted parts of us begin to soften. We begin to release a lot of emotions and things we've been holding on to, and we just start to feel more safe, to have our experience more safe, to be alive, to just exist in the moment. And that's what really brings the peace and harmony. So the purification process is always like the first thing, because if we don't do that, none of the other stuff is going to take. So focus on the purification stuff. And yeah, purification might be kind of a weird word, but it's the healing stuff. After the purification stuff, the next level in many traditions, not all traditions, but many, is actually opening up the energy body and especially awakening the central channel. This is very true in yogic traditions. It's very true in Tibetan Buddhism, although it's often underemphasized in Tibetan Buddhism until you get to those higher levels. In certain traditions like Qigong, like the inner alchemy of Qigong, you actually kind of start with this, and it's okay to start with this. But what happens is if you open up the central channels and the energy channels before you've done the purification, is that often the purification will just happen super fast. Like once the energy's open, it goes directly for all of the contracted, blocked parts, and it can be really difficult for people. I have had a few friends who have gone deep in their meditation. They had these kind of energetic awakenings, and then it was extremely difficult for them because so much stuff was coming up so rapidly. It was really emotionally overwhelming. So this is why it's usually safest to start with all the purification stuff, with just simple practice, being with your experience as it is, developing equanimity. That's the key. That's why I always emphasize equanimity. If you open up like the energy channels or your awareness, your expansive awareness, you break down the barriers in your being before you develop a lot of equanimity, you're gonna have a rough time. Now, when it comes to awakening the central channel or the energy body, a lot of traditions teach this clenching. So in Tibetan Buddhism, also in yogic traditions like Kriya Yoga and Kundalini Yoga, you are taught to kind of clench these parts and try to move the energy up, which actually sort of works, but it works because you're then later relaxing the parts. So the energy can really only flow when all the muscles, all the parts in your energy body are relaxed. This is taught especially in Qigong. And Qigong works really well, and this is now like shown scientifically, that to reduce tension, really slow mindful movements are really effective. So while like Kriya Yoga, Kundalini Yoga use this clenching and then release, that can also be really helpful. Like if you have tension in your shoulder, if you kind of tighten it, clench it, and then release, and just do that over and over really mindfully, what you're doing is you're kind of wiring your brain into the muscles so you can have more control over those muscles. We hold so much tension and there's no awareness of it, but by really focusing on the areas and activating them by either clenching them or tapping them or just staying super hyper focused on them, we kind of wake up these parts of our body that we previously didn't have conscious control over, and we learn how to release the tension, how to let go, and how to be in more ease in those parts. This is what happens with the Goenka style Vipassana, the body scans. You're scanning each part, bringing awareness into the part, so then you can consciously have more relationship with it and actually have more control with it. So you can actively kind of let go of the tension that's unconsciously being held there. Now, Qigong uses really slow, mindful movement to help kind of bring awareness into these parts and activate them and allow you to release the tension there. All of the energy activating stuff is ultimately about being able to release unconscious held tension. And once we can do that, then the energy will flow a lot more freely. So then once the energy channels are open, and again, not all traditions focus on the energy channels, but most really do, even if they don't lead with that, even if you have to study for years, they will eventually usually get to some opening up the energy body. And once that is done, then you move into the non-dual awareness stuff. So you see this especially in Tibetan Buddhism, where you start with prostrations and prayers and daily meditation, developing concentration, and then you work your way up to tantric practices, which are largely about opening up the energy channels. and kind of shifting your perspective of self or dissolving your sense of self. And then you move into like the pure meditation, the Dzogchen or the Mahamudra, where you're just tuning in to an expansive awareness. Like that's it. You are just expanding your awareness beyond your normal body, your normal sense of self, out in all directions, and you're resting in this expansive sense of being. So you're not identified with yourself anymore. You're really stretching out your sense of being to far beyond your regular sense of self. Now, a lot of the top-down traditions will kind of skip all that other stuff, and they'll move directly into this, like Advaita Vedanta or teachers like Ramana Maharshi, or many contemporary teachers like Adyashanti or Rupert Spira, or Locke Kelly, or one of my favorites, YouTube guy Angelo DeLullo. These teachers all just go straight for this non-duality, this expansive sense of being. And for a lot of people, it works. A lot of people can get a glimpse of this more expansive sense of awareness, this sense of being beyond the finite self. And I don't think there's any problem in starting with these practices, but when the barriers come up, that's where I think the instructions from a lot of teachers can be somewhat unhelpful, where they just keep directing you towards this non-dual expansive awareness, this non-identifying with the problems. And for some people that can work. But I think for a lot of people, it's like spiritual bypassing. It's avoiding the problems, not addressing them directly. And then the problems fester. They don't go away. So if you're able to really, truly get into this non-dual state, then the problems will eventually be worked through because you're breaking down the barriers that keep those problems at bay. And yes, you will confront them. They're not just going to go away. You're going to have to feel through them. But I think it's a lot safer and a lot more sensical to just approach the problems directly, to bring more inner understanding, to explore the feelings in your body, to explore whatever the triggers are, the complexes, the emotions you're carrying, to methodically and carefully learn to explore and sit with those at a rate that suits you, at a rate where you feel safe to do it. And again, this is what's done in therapy. This is what I do on my channel with meditation, is slowly just acclimating people to be with the experiences that previously they've been avoiding. That's really the purification process, and that's really how we heal. I'm aware that there are a lot of people out there, one specific, Joe Dispenza, who teaches that we can just shift our being, shift our mindset, and with that, the healing can happen like kind of instantaneously. And I don't doubt that this actually happens for a lot of people, but I don't think it works for the majority. I think the majority of people, the most sensical, the most mature approach is to first approach what's there, not to avoid it, not to try to shift your being, but to try to get to the root of what you're feeling, the root of what's been avoided, the root of your grief, the root of your pain, the root of your emotions. And of course, a lot of people aren't ready to dive into this. So it's really acclimating, it's building up the resources, the sense of safety through your meditation practice, through your relationships, through being able to express these things in whatever way you can. And then once you've been moving that, once you've kind of gotten over the hump of getting into the root things, then you can start to shift your identity. Then you can start to shift your sense of self away from this like smaller, more limited sense of self to a more, expansive, more free, more expressive, more creative sense of self, more embodied, more empowered sense of self. But it's going to be a lot harder to do that if you're ignoring what you're feeling. It's really getting to the root of the feelings, exploring them, finding the ways in which you can start to feel more safe to be with the discomfort, and then working on your sense of self and really making that the primary focus of your practice. Now, I do think that you can, and it's probably even beneficial to work on these things at the same time. I don't think you need to start with the purification and then finish that, because I don't know if that's ever finished, and then start working on the next thing, but more try different things out. See what's alive in the moment. You can try these more expansive awareness practices. Maybe they're going to work. If they don't work, then you can look at, what's getting in the way, and then go into that. Again, that's what I'm really doing on my channel. What I've also found to be really true, again, especially with myself, is that what really makes us feel more safe to go into the discomfort is often getting our life on a better track. Essentially being more true to who we are. I really put off becoming a therapist because I didn't feel ready to take on the responsibility. I was afraid of the freedoms that I might have to give up if I took on all the responsibility of having clients that, you're really responsible too. But me stepping into that role because it's something that I felt really aligned and called to do, that is what started to really shift things for me. And I've seen this with clients time and time again, that when they start to be true to themselves around what they really want to do with their lives, around what their calling is, around how they can better the world or be a meaningful part of the world or impact others in a meaningful way, when they start doing that, that's when there's usually more of a sense of safety in their being, because their being feels more aligned with who they are. And that's often when the deeper healing work can just naturally happen. When we get to these more stable places in our life, when we feel like we're more aligned with who we are, that's often when these things will naturally, organically start to arise for us. Old feelings, fears, emotions all might start coming up, and it's really an opportunity to be with these things. And yes, it may take a while, but the practice is to just be with whatever's arising and know it's okay to be with these things, even if it's uncomfortable. So I know I've talked about a lot of things in this video, but this is what I'm really trying to do on my channel, is kind of integrate this understanding, offer different practices for people who are at different places in their journey, who are ready for different things, and really give you the understanding to direct your own healing or awakening journey. I'm working on this big resource now, free resource. I'm calling it Whole. It's a comprehensive healing resource that addresses all of these things I've discussed. If you would like to support it, that'd be awesome. I have a Patreon, link in the description. But I'm really just happy if you start to utilize these things yourself and start to understand yourself better and heal and grow through these practices. So thank you for tuning in.